So this is Black Friday SEO strategies to start next week because you're already too late. My name is Garrett Sussman, and I'm joined today by Zach Chahalis. Thank you, Zach, for taking some time to do this with us. This is awesome.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So Zach is the director of SEO at iPullRank. I'm the demand gen manager. Zach kind of works behind the scenes with all of our clients. I am much more forward facing. What's your history working with e-commerce clients in the past, Zach?
Yeah, so my SEO background is a little over, decently over a dozen years at this point. The majority of which has been agency side, working with a lot of e-commerce brands, anything from electronic space into clothing, into different other aspects. And even if you want to consider hospitality part of e-commerce, depends who you ask on that one. So I work with a lot of different sites over time and even now work with a lot of our e-commerce type brands today.
Huge. And obviously, yeah, to your point, like e-commerce runs the gamut. So we're going to start diving into all this. A little bit about what we're going over today. Everything from how the recession we think might impact Black Friday SEO to some of all the algo updates that have happened in the last 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks or 2 days. Some of the new tools that Google has been rolling out over the past couple of years, ways to improve your product pages ahead of Black Friday, what to include in a pre-Black Friday technical SEO audit, prioritizations, like what you really should get going, local e-commerce, and then our parting thoughts. So first off, the recession and how it might impact Black Friday. So I want to point out that I think it's safe to say that we aren't technically in a recession, and we probably won't even hit a recession. However, the media narrative for the last 4 to 6 weeks and probably going into the holiday season will be all about inflation, recession, layoffs in tech across a whole bunch of different industries, supply chain issues, and all of these will potentially impact consumer buying. One thing I will say is that economists frequently get the whole recession thing wrong. So even though the narrative is there and it's not actually happening, the narrative will change the way people behave. Zach, what are your thoughts on the recession in terms of consumer behavior?
Yeah, it's been interesting to kind of watch because not only we're in the idea of a recession, but we're also still dealing with the effects of COVID, right? So we're dealing with increasing prices. Obviously, inflation is a thing right now. I think even just went up again. 6.5% was announced the other day. But we're also at the same time dealing with stock shortages on everything, anything from concrete up until still some electronic devices. I think if you want to try and get a PlayStation 5 right now, good luck. So we're kind of running into that issue right now where, there's kind of the idea of a recession that's going on, but there's also still a lot of people that are trying to get their hands on stuff and are spending money actively, even regardless of the price going up.
I'm with you 100%. And there's a lot of competing factors here. So first off, when people are actually starting their holiday shopping, historically, that's been earlier and earlier. More and more people are moving all the way till August. But for all the factors that you mentioned, I think it's even less predictable now because, you might want to have your consumers might be purchasing because they're afraid of the supply shortages and running out and not being able to get what they want. Other people do want to wait for deals. I've also read actually that a lot of major brands that are selling big ticket items like furniture and TVs, because of inflation, nobody's buying them. So they're actually starting to drop their prices and producing offers that are coming way earlier than the holiday season. What do you think, Zach? Do you think it's going to be spread across in terms of buying behavior, or do you think it'll be more like earlier than normal?
I think it might depend on the particular industry that we're talking about. And the reason I say that is I am in the market for some firms right now. And every time I go to look for something, the exact piece I want is out of stock. So it's kind of a question of okay, I could wait for a sale to happen, but is it even going to be available at that point in time? But I'm also a gamer. So I love tech stuff. I love anything to do with that. And now we're seeing, graphics cards for computers, which have been at an extreme shortage for 2 years even predating COVID, now kind of getting to the point where not only are they readily available, but they're actually being sold at a discount. So it's kind of interesting to see. And you think about, hey, I'm going into the holiday season. Do I buy that now while that's still a discount? Hey, I know there's some new products coming. Do I try and wait to see if I can get my hands on that? But then knowing the stock shortages we had with the last generation, is it actually worth doing that? Do you put yourself at risk there?
Exactly. So there are two factors. One, you have to be kind of hyper aware of your industry and trends in your industry, and B, you just have to be ready for anything that it's really going to be hard to predict. And just talking about trends, if you look at, like, if you go into Google Trends and you look into Black Friday, where people might be searching for various types of Black Friday deals, it dropped off significantly due to the pandemic. But even last year, as we, in theory, were getting out of the pandemic, it stayed flat. However, I will say that this graph is deceiving because, as you'll see, this is for all categories. If you start to drill down into specific categories, and here I pulled the same Black Friday term, but specifically for like apparel or computers and electronics or home and gardens, like going down, whereas apparel is going up. This kind of speaks to that idea that depending on your industry, you're going to see different trends. So it's going to be very interesting. And to that extent, you shouldn't assume that it's going to be one way or the other just because a general blanket trend exists. So going into all of the big news that has been happening over the past few weeks, the Google algorithm update and how it's going to impact Black Friday. And this is kind of the reason that we think this webinar is still super relevant is I anticipate a series of volatility when it comes to the ongoing updates, all these crossover updates that we're going to be seeing, and the SERPs will be changing. So there's a lot of opportunity. So first off, product reviews update. This started all the way back in April of last year. They, as happens with Google, didn't get it right necessarily the first time. So we had iteration 2 in December, didn't get it right, iteration 3 in March, didn't get it right, iteration 4 in July of this year. And now we do know that there is a 5th one that's coming out. Zach, what are kind of your high level thoughts on how they've been rolling out the product reviews update and how that's impacting everything?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see because every time they've done one of these updates, we've seen different impacts, some more severe than others, but it seems like they're trying to correct and settle in on the right way to pull all the levers. So, if you think about an algorithm, almost like a mixer board, trying to adjust all those different levels and get it exactly right. It seems like every time we do this, we're tweaking something just so. And it seems to have a notable enough impact on what we see in the front end from a search result perspective, but it has varied depending on the update.
And their goal obviously is to provide quality. And there have been a lot more voices, I think, across the media that has been critical of the results of Google and that the quality has gone down. And, obviously they're trying to get better at it. And it's debatable the extent to which they have successfully. I mean, this whole product reviews update is the idea of you don't want affiliates that are just doing thin content with people who have never actually tried a product to rank highly for really key, rich keywords. And so we'll look into and see what these current results are as of September 9th. But that's not the only thing that's going on. We've got a helpful content update that was rolled out, basically last month, beginning of August, and late August. And there's a lot of confusion around it, but it is this idea that basically you should be creating content for users, not SEOing content for search engines, that it should, not use too much auto-generated content from AI, that was made for the computers, and that it shouldn't be, you shouldn't divert your focus across a whole bunch of topics. You should stay in your lane. What's your initial takeaway, Zach, with the helpful content update?
Yeah, and it's been interesting to see. I mean, in some cases, you look at a lot of industries or sites and, you're not necessarily seeing any impact or change. You look at other industries, such as, those sites that are looking at every possible category of news, or we're seeing a lot of lyric sites that are getting impacted by the helpful content update, where the quality of the content is just not there. So it can certainly depend, but this is considered to be a site-wide factor. So you can have a couple of great pieces of content and then a lot of bad pieces of content, and it can start to catch up with you. But if you're, a site that is typically producing great quality content, a few smaller ones that are not necessarily as good, not going to hurt you as much. And we're seeing a lot of people overreact with just getting rid of content on their site, and certainly should not be doing that right now. It needs to be looked at closely before you start just cutting content.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We've started to see some results of this. Like people have picked out here or there situations where they can kind of pinpoint it. But to your point, it is a site-wide signal. It's continuously rolling out. So this is something we're going to see kind of subtly behind the scenes over the next few months. But you shouldn't do anything rash with any sort of major core update. You should always kind of hold tight and wait before you just like flip your site upside down. Speaking of which, surprise, after all of these big updates, we found out on the 12th that there was a surprise 2022 September core update, which tends to actually produce a lot more volatility in the SERPs. Thoughts, Zach?
I can't help but think that these things are related to one another. So certainly something to kind of keep an eye on there. Hey, we've now added in this site-wide signal. Do we now need to update how the core is looking at everything to account for this new signal? And that may lead to some other things happening down the line. Maybe you weren't seeing initial impact from the helpful content update, but maybe you might start to see it after the core update rolls out. The thing to keep in mind is these core updates, and even helpful content as well, they take time to roll out, a week to 2 weeks to roll out to every Google data center. So definitely don't overreact when you're seeing, initial fluctuations as things are going on, but certainly something worth keeping an eye on, especially as we move forward.
Exactly. And anyone who says that some like specific algo update might impact your site probably doesn't. Like nobody actually knows what's going on with this sort of stuff. It's, usually the best fundamentals of best practices of like producing good content, having, using internal links. We're going to get into all of the nitty-gritty of what you can do to be surfaced. But there's a lot going on ahead of the holidays, which is why we anticipate there's going to be a lot of fluctuations between now and Thanksgiving.
And worth noting too, even another rumored update around local search that took place last week too. It's not confirmed, but it's something that has been seen. So there's a lot of fluctuations going on right now.
Which is a great point too, because you'll notice with any sort of query with local intent, a lot more e-commerce results are coming in. Not only that, just in general with e-commerce results, you'll see a recommended local result in the e-commerce like product listings, which we'll talk about momentarily. But so if whether you have a brick and mortar store or an e-commerce site, those are all factors you need to pay attention to, because it's almost like to some extent Google is trying to push local e-commerce solutions in a lot of their like general results. So one big other announcement that isn't an algo update, but it's an opportunity, is that they've expanded the eligibility for product listings. Typically, this was tied to advertising in the Google marketplace. It was tied to, having some structured data on your website, but now they've explicitly said basically any site is eligible for both these product listings, which could appear in like your popular products, like this kind of pack image, like product pack, as well as actual snippets, which might say something like your aggregate rating, and how many reviews you have, and your price and your availability. We're going to talk about this, but I'm going to hold on to that because we're going to talk about structured data a little bit later. So how about the e-commerce SERPs? When you are looking at these SERPs, so first off, when it comes to who is showing up for e-commerce related SERPs, BrightEdge did a very interesting study that was published in Search Engine Land. And what it showed was retailers had a big piece of the pie as of 2020 in terms of share of voice. Their kind of visibility is shrinking. Brands are growing a little bit, publishers are growing a little bit, but basically you're seeing more of a kind of democracy around the types of websites that are surfacing in e-commerce SERPs. What were you saying with this, Zach?
Yeah, and this makes sense, right? So as Google's gotten a lot better at understanding intent behind particular queries, it makes more sense to start factoring in other companies or brands into results. So if I'm just searching for, as a video gamer, I'm just searching for Call of Duty. Does my intent mean I'm just wanting to learn more about the game, about the series, or does it intend that I'm trying to buy something? So you may start to see more of like the actual brand or the publisher factoring into that, or news articles, than a particular retailer, until you start looking at maybe buy or modified queries where it's like, hey, buy Call of Duty Black Ops 52 or whatever we're up to. And, then you start to see more of those retailers come into play, and you start seeing the news sites start to shift down. So it can entirely depend on the query, as Google's gotten a lot smarter at understanding that intent.
I think that's a great point, especially when you think about devices like mobile results are becoming much more, or giving you many more opportunities to refine your query. And like this is, in the context of mom and trying to point you in a certain direction to make sure you find exactly what you want, it makes sense that there's going to be a bigger variety of the types of results you'll see the more general your query is. So looking at some specific SERPs, just like looking at basketball shoes, all ads at the top, right? It's kind of what you expect. It's a high volume, short search term. So it's mostly going to be ads. And similar for as we get a little more branded and focused, like Nike basketball shoes, then we're getting even more targeted. Now we're going to see like visuals. When you use like visual in your terms, you got to remember that Google is trying to provide these results that speak to what you expect to see, what the searcher expects to see. So for red Nike basketball shoes, you're going to see a lot of red shoes. And then you're going to see, when you get really into like the Air Jordans, then you see a little bit more of that variety that kind of Zach was speaking to. You see an ad product pack, you see an image carousel, you see a couple of organic listings at the top there. Now, going to this product reviews update, which I found really interesting, is on the other hand, if you have kids' toys, you already see like a little bit of that local pack search intent pushed in there beneath the ads. Then if you go to like Fisher Price Kid Toys, right into the ads for the product listings, the PLAs, then some images and the organic listing. Then when we get into, safe Fisher Price Toys, we start to see like articles, like these modifiers at the top of the funnel that are going to become from those more, those blog posts as opposed to the actual retailers and brands. And then when we did get really into it, I found best Fisher Price kids toys, which I thought would actually produce like high quality results now that we're on iteration 4 of the product reviews update. Turns out first organic listing there, parenting.com. That's what you'd expect to see from toys, even though they got hit like a couple of years ago. But it's a parenting site. You expect kids toys. The second one, Mama's Uncut. I am so sorry if you are the SEO for Mama's Uncut, but this site is garbage. Like, it is ads all over the place. The actual like product review is really minimal and not valuable. They're obviously just trying to make money. It's poor looking. It's poor navigation. This was on the 9th. So the product reviews update for something as probably high value as best Fisher Price kids toys is not producing quality results yet. Zach, how close are we in terms of like getting to a good quality result?
Blunt answer, I think we still got a little bit of ways to go, but we're getting better every time we do an update. I mean, that's the thing. You think about how much Google's algorithm has evolved over the years of just being based on, backlinking signals to where we are today. It continues to get better. Are we perfect right now? No. Obviously, this proves that we're not. But we are continuing to go in that right direction, and more and more people are starting to see, hey, here are actual results that do address my query, but there's certainly some areas of opportunity to do better.
Speaking of opportunities to do better, let's go into some of Zach's biggest tips across the board of what you should be doing, or should have already been doing, but really should start doing next week to get your e-commerce site ready for Black Friday. So one last thing I do want to touch on is we got a couple of tools to be aware of, and this is going to lead into kind of the product image side of things, but Google has provided some visual search tools, specifically Google Lens, which they claim is used by over 8 billion people. And it allows you to use your phone. On Android, it's native. On iPhone, you do need to use like a Chrome app or the Google app, where Google can kind of identify the visual. And so if you're hanging out at a friend's house, or if you're walking down the street and you see something in a store that you want to purchase, use Google Lens, and then you can actually find that online really easily. It's very effective. It's impressive. And then a second part of that is multi-search, which they released on, they mentioned it on Search On last year, which actually is coming up at the end of the month, the newest Search On, which is a big hour conference where they talk through all of Search's new tools. Multi-search combines photos and text. So you can take a picture of something and then add some more contextualization by a written search that will allow you to find a more nuanced result. Not a lot of people are aware of this, but every day more and more people are. My quick example is just like if you are walking down the street and you see a window display with clothes or furniture, people might be using the Google Lens to find that online. So if you are on the SEO team and you're working with your in-store retailers or any sort of sponsorship or in real life product marketing, you want to communicate and ensure that your website has some sort of kind of synchronicity with those displays, whether it's in terms of the products or the branding, so that if someone uses Google Lens, they actually find your site as a result. There's going to be opportunities there. Any thoughts there, Zach?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how this continues to evolve, but let's take the idea of window shopping to a whole different level.
Absolutely. I do it in stores when I'm looking in stores, and they show how you can people look at reviews when they're in the store these days. So in terms of the product pages, I'm going to kind of let you take it away, Zach, in terms of what people can be doing.
Yeah. So from a product page perspective, these can always be improved. And what we're going to look at here are a couple of quick ways that you can think about enhancing your product pages, especially if you're considering making any changes to these templates moving forward. But one of the big things is ensuring that all of your product pages have higher quality imagery. There are some sites that are very good at doing this. Apple, for example, is great at capturing imagery of their products and getting it on the site. But when you encounter a product page that just doesn't have an image whatsoever, more than likely the conversion rate of that particular product is notably worse than what you're seeing for, a product where a customer can actually see what's going on there. So even in some situations where you can enhance that would be very valuable, as well as situations like this where you have the ability to zoom in on a particular product. So, in this case, Ray-Ban does this quite well with, on their site where you're able to look at particular glasses, especially something like on the fashion side where I want to see, hey, how does this look up close? How does this look in actuality? Being able to zoom in on that product can be very valuable, especially if you factor in different color variations or product variations and be able to see that up close and personal.
Real quick question on that, Zach. Because you see a lot of furniture and clothing places do the AR. They're doing the AR move. Do you have any thoughts of the risks or benefits of using AR in e-commerce?
A, it's going to be a little bit more costly to develop, but B, from an SEO standpoint, it's not going to provide as much value from that side of things. There's certainly value to it from the user experience side, but I still don't feel like AR has caught on enough from a usability perspective to justify doing that over enhancing an e-commerce experience on a website. With that said, there are certainly some brands that do it quite well. Glasses company that allow you to try on the glasses, or to your point, furniture stores, or I believe Wayfair does this quite well. Like, hey, I want to see this in my living room. It can certainly help to add to that experience overall and really help to sell someone like, oh, I could pull this off. Yeah. The thing to kind of call out here is there are some studies on this topic, of course, but one we wanted to note, customers are 3 times more likely to buy online when a retailer does offer that rich imagery. So this is a quote from Practical Commerce. There are a lot of sites that do this quite well. Another good example here are Yeti coolers, where not only do they have great photography of their products in action, but they also supplement that with users submitted imagery and reviews.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think that probably helps conversions as well. Also from just the SEO perspective, you're getting all this original visual content on your site.
Yep. Another good thing is keeping your imagery and your description above the fold as best as you can. In some scenarios, it's a little bit more difficult to work with that, but you want to try and be able to pull people in And when they have to dig to learn about the product, it can be very difficult to kind of understand, what's going on there. But also the imagery is something that just draws your eye in immediately. So make sure that that's not getting buried below the fold. If you're not really providing any value that above the fold area, hey, you just have a banner, it's not going to keep people on the page. More than likely, they're going to leave and go to a site that has a better experience.
And to that point, Search Pilot actually ran an experiment. So, the placement of your content does matter. And a lot of SEOs will, with your templates, kind of test out where certain things, are and how that actually impacts, your organic traffic. So just in this experiment they did with specifically the product description above the fold, they found a 14% uplift of organic traffic on desktop.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to A/B test either. I mean, that's the thing. Websites are not meant to be permanent, right? I mean, eventually you get redesigned or tweaked or edited. This is a case where, and maybe not during peak seasons like Black Friday, but you can throughout the year test different ways of structuring your product pages, moving things around, changing your headers, maybe showing things in different ways. See what's working best for your particular site. And then that's something that you can implement in the longer run until you think about redoing a page or an entire website.
That's a great point, by the way, about testing. Is like you should always be testing, except when it's especially for seasonality, when it's your biggest time of year and you don't know, and the risk of testing and getting it wrong is too big.
Yep. Yeah, and testimonials are another big piece as well, right? So obviously the product review update has really impacted the approach to this, but for the better as it continues to evolve and get a little bit smarter in terms of how it functions. But people want to see, hey, is this product actually good? I know, as I've been looking, like I mentioned, I'm looking for furniture. As I'm looking at particular furniture and I'm comparing different pieces, I'm certainly looking at reviews and people are saying, hey, this is crap, it's falling apart real quick. I'm not going to be as likely to look at that particular product. So that can really help to guide that. But also that user submitted content is extremely valuable for SEO because, it's unique to you. And this is content that's essentially being crowdsourced that you're getting, in essence, for free, but can help to improve on the SEO perspective. And it also leads to great areas of opportunity around structured data markup, both for the reviews themselves, but also for FAQ content, identifying those questions that your customers are asking about a product and answering that directly on your site. If you're marking that up with structured data, you likely have seen the people also ask consideration within search results. It's being driven by that structured data markup and having that content available. So if you do that, not only are you able to improve your on-site experience, but you can potentially improve your visibility within search results as well.
And real quick on that point about reviews is I would not be surprised if not already is that they use the content in the reviews to source for keywords. Like you are more, especially at the local search level, like you are more likely to show up for a specific product if it's actually written in the review text.
100%. So page speed. Obviously, this has been an increased emphasis for search engines over the last couple of years. Is it the end-all be-all ranking factor? No. But site speed has a dramatic impact on a site's ability to convert and keep people on the site. So ideally, you want your site load time to be within a 2 to 3 second range. That's Google's exact quote of where you should be. Is it easy to get there? Not always. And there's a lot of value in essentially beating out your competitors, having a better experience than your competitors, even if it's not perfect. But continuing to iterate and improve on that can go a long way. But your conversion rate will decrease for every additional second of load time it takes for your site to render, especially on mobile devices. And your bounce rate will get worse for every additional second it takes for that page to load. So definitely don't ignore site speed and experience because people are leaving your site as a result. I worked with e-commerce brands over the course of my career where they were able to fix their site load time going from 9 seconds to 4 seconds. And their revenue went up notably because of it, because more people are staying on the site and they're not getting turned off by that experience.
And one other call out there is don't disregard the device again. Like you see, we have 2 screenshots of Amazon for their mobile and their desktop. Like if you have a fast site on desktop, but for whatever reason, there's some low technical issues on mobile, and you have a lot of people purchasing your products on mobile, that's problematic.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, Google has mostly switched, I'm going to say mostly, to mobile first indexing. There are certainly some sites that haven't yet. But Google is looking at your site based on that mobile perspective first. But definitely keep an eye on your analytics data. If you're in Adobe, Google Analytics, whatever it may be, look at the device breakdown that you have coming in. If the majority of your folks are coming in on mobile and your mobile experience isn't there, imagine what that would be if people were actually able to do something on your site.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yep. So product variants. Allow these variants to easily be selected and viewed. This is something that Amazon and a lot of other sites like this do quite well, where, hey, I can immediately see the different package offerings. And full transparency, I actually just bought this speaker 3 days ago, but I was in there looking at different color options, just kind of going, oh, this is cool, and be able to easily switch between them, but then have that product imagery reflect that. Amazon also does quite well when something's bundled together. Like you'll see, hey, it's a speaker and power bank. Being able to see the way that those variants can be easily chosen and selected. It's not only a way of just improving that experience, but also could lead to upsell opportunities too, if you're kind of taking that approach.
And from we're going to talk about site architecture later, but from like a structure standpoint, the URLs, how do you approach variants when it comes to that? Does it matter?
So it does matter, but there's some considerations there. If your variants are not worthy enough to stand on their own, it may not make sense to have these reflected on different URLs and stand on their own from an indexability standpoint. If you really want those variants to exist independently, they need to be supported by unique considerations, unique metadata, unique headers, unique content, imagery, things that can actually allow these pages to stand apart from one another. Because if it's the same product description across 8 different color variations of something, now you've just created duplicate content, and search engines aren't looking at just the color of a product image saying, oh yeah, this is different. So you need to ensure that if you're going to allow those variants to stand on their own, that they actually truly do stand on their own with unique content.
That's great advice, because it is tricky, right? Because your instinct is to create unique content for just a different colored shirt, and there's only so much you can say about just the color being the only attribute that's different.
But there's certainly some value in it too, also depending on what your customers are looking for. Working in the electronic space for a period of time, there was certainly a lot of demand on, hey, I want a red Xbox controller. And, allowing that content to be indexable is very valuable to that particular audience set. But the content needs to support that being individual.
Yeah.
The other consideration is pricing and availability. Having this be easily shown and identified on a page can go a long way. People want to be able to see what that price point is. They want to be able to see if the product is available. There's nothing more painful right now, especially going back to the earlier conversation where some products are just not available, of coming into a site and not being able to see, hey, when would I actually get this product? So even if you don't have the product available, having that information readily available just results in a better experience and may keep people coming back in the long run. But if you do have the product available and the pricing's right there, it can dramatically improve the conversion rate.
And to that point, to some extent, that's a complicated thing because that's a process thing that you need to have implemented properly. And I feel like the bigger the brand you are, the more you can get away with it. The smaller the brand, the expectation. I mean, I actually be curious to hear your opinion. That's my
I do agree.
Intuition.
Yeah, I do agree. And that's the thing, is having worked with various retailers over time that are more niche in that sense, you have to do more than a big box store is going to, just because of the recognition in that space, right? So if I keep going back to the idea of video games and controllers and whatnot, when you're competing against Walmart, Target, Best Buy, Amazon, they're all selling the same thing. You have to stand out on your own. You can't provide a worse experience than those big box stores are, because otherwise you're just encouraging them to go to those big box stores. You need to make that experience valuable enough that a user wants to work with you.
Absolutely. Reputation can really be made or broken over the holiday season, as we'll get to a little bit later when we're talking about site stability.
Yep.
But talking all this structured data.
Yeah.
I know you really want us to get there. Hold off. We'll get there. I promise. So what do you prioritize ahead of Black Friday, Zach?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that you can still do, and there's ways of getting this in place before Black Friday. One big area of opportunity is buying guides. So obviously with the helpful content update, you can't just spit out, junk content. But there's an area of opportunity to look at these buying guide type pieces. There's so many educational queries that are coming in around the holidays where people are looking for, hey, what is the best gift to buy? Hey, what is the best laptop for a kid heading off to college? Having these buying guides can allow you to take advantage of those educational queries and potentially turn them into transactional queries where like, hey, this site has done such a great job of educating me about this product. I'm now going to go buy it from them. This is something that like a site like Bose, where they're actually I'm going to say manufacturer in quotes of their products. They do a great job of writing up that content of like, here's how to choose the best speaker for your needs.
And it shows up in search.
100%. These buying guides also allow you to build up authority. So as EAT or EAT has become kind of more prevalent from the SEO standpoint, you want to become an authority on a topic, right? So this is something that a site like Nintendo does very well, where they have buying guides about their products, the games, the accessories, what games should I buy for this particular age group or someone that's interested in this. So by building up that perspective of expertise on a certain topic set and talking about the benefits and even comparing yourself to competitors and how, this might be better than something else, you'll build up that authority within the space that allows you to not only become more recognizable just as a brand, but also help search engines better understand, hey, this site is an expert on this topic. These buying guides also offer a ton of internal linking opportunities. So one of the biggest things for any website is ensuring that you have a logical internal linking strategy in place that's effectively taking authority and having it flow throughout the site. So typically, for example, your homepage is the most authoritative page of a site on average. And you want to make sure that the authority is flowing to those deeper pages. What buying guides offer is the opportunity to not only, again, take advantage of that educational query type content, but be able to link directly to those products and make that into a transactional piece. And these buying guides are often pieces of content that folks like to link to, right? So these buying guides are going to get more than likely more backlinks than your particular product. And by having internal linking that goes from your buying guide to your product pages, this can help with the flow of authority to those products and help make them stronger as a result.
I totally agree with that. And it's also, to your point, like a very good supplement for category pages,
100%.
because you're building out that internal link structure from the category pages to the buying guides as well. So it works back and forth.
100%. Yep.
Black Friday pages. There's a whole other can of worms I know you love personally.
So yeah, I'm a little bit of passion about this, right? So holiday pages are a fantastic area of opportunity for any website, especially on the e-commerce side. But when you're looking at it, the idea is, hey, how can we make these pages work? They allow you to directly target a brand plus holiday type phrase. So, brand plus Black Friday, brand plus Cyber Monday, all the various holidays that exist during that time of the year. And what you don't want is another site beating you out here. So I've worked with various e-commerce retailers over time where, hey, we don't want to talk about our Black Friday deals. Okay, cool. But all these sites like a Retail Me Not or, other news sites that are talking about you are the ones getting this traffic. And if they're not sending that traffic to you, more than likely to possibly go into a competitor instead. So that's a big area of opportunity for you to own that space. You should own your query phrases, but having an actual Black Friday or holiday type page can help you achieve that. It also offers a wide variety of internal linking opportunities to go back to those pages on your site. So, if you have products that are specifically being discounted for Black Friday and you're saying, hey, as Kohl's, we're marking up these Under Armour deals, right? by being able to point directly to that, you're again allowing the flow of authority to exist between those pages. So now you're building up the authority on the Black Friday side of things, but you're also sending that authority from an SEO standpoint to those products. But there's also a user experience benefit too, right? So if people are coming in and seeing, oh, I can get 30% off of this for Black Friday, and being able to easily click to it will help to improve that experience on their side as well. They also, I want to kind of call out here, Black Friday pages are not just a 2-week, 1 month, a year type thing, right? If you're constantly taking these pages in and out, it can hurt your ability to perform with them in the long run of things. What I've typically recommended to any brand I've worked with is if you're going to create a holiday page, like a Black Friday page, continue to maintain it throughout the entire year. You don't need to have full deals all the time. Even if it kind of turns into a, hey, check out our deals later on this year, ahead of Black Friday, here's some things that could address your needs in the interim type of content, that can still go a long way, but at least you've been able to maintain that URL and that page throughout the entire year. And you're not just trying to unwind a redirect or bring it back from being a 404, every year. It becomes a lot more difficult for search engines to consider that page to be authoritative if you're constantly sending mixed signals that, like, hey, 11 months out of the year, this page doesn't exist.
Right. And to that point, I mean, in terms of all the backlinks you generate, and there's good ways to do it, kind of like Home Depot here, where you see like this is their 2021 Black Friday page. They actually really, smartly put out the banner, the seasonal savings have ended, but it's still an easily like indexable, like discoverable page.
And with that note too, what Home Depot does very well is they don't have a year in the URL string for that page, right? So that means that you can keep reusing it every year and update to those newest deals. You're not just, hey, here's 2021, we're done, we're going to start over again. That's just as inefficient as not having it. You want to be able to maintain that authority each and every year, and you'll start to get stronger as a brand from an organic standpoint. That will allow you not only to potentially rank for, obviously your own branded queries, but potentially non-branded queries as the page builds up its value.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to call out here that we were talking about the other day is the idea that even if you do have a certain year, like this happens with like a lot of reports, but if you cover a certain year, that page doesn't necessarily have to completely die. You can, because people still will search for things like, Black Friday or deals 2021 or whatever before that. There's stuff you can still do with that content, right?
Yeah, and it entirely depends on kind of the intent too, right? There are some instances where people will search for legacy deals, and maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing to have that content live somewhere too. But even going back to the idea of buying guides, something like an electronic space, every year there's going to be new laptops, new devices, new phones, new whatever. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to maintain what has happened in the past, but you want to make sure that you're driving the authority to what's actually going on right now. So that's where having that URL without a year in it can provide a ton of value. But you can always take content and create URLs around it if there's a demand for, previous content of a, last year, for example.
Yeah, that's a great call with the buying guides is utilizing, because, if you're getting the new iPhone or a new camera or whatever, there's people are still going to be looking to save for ones that of the older models and want information.
Right. If I'm Best Buy, I don't want people coming in looking at, hey, what's the best laptop of 2012? Because that's not going to help anyone at this point.
No.
Yeah. So your cart process is something that should not be ignored at any point in time, but especially during the holiday season. It's one thing to get people to come to your site, but enabling them to actually check out, as simple as that might seem, is often a very difficult task for some sites to achieve. So there are a couple things that we want to kind of talk about within this area. The average e-commerce shopping rate abandonment is about 65%. So there's a lot of reasons that kind of lead into this. The first one is if your site does not have a smooth checkout, it can just turn people away from going through that process, right? So in theory, I add a product to my cart, I go and check out, it should be seamless. The more difficult you make that experience, it's like you don't want the money. I'm sitting here wanting to give you money, but you just don't want it. So ensure that people can actually effectively go through that process. Also offer a variety of ways to pay. So that's one big thing is a lot of sites, hey, we have Apple Pay, we've got GPay, we've got all these digital wallet type approaches now. If you're not supporting these ways that your customers want to pay, you're potentially turning away that revenue. They may just go somewhere else of like, oh, from a convenience standpoint, I'm going to go buy it from this big box retailer instead because you've made it very difficult for me to use how I want to check out.
Yeah, just point in case, the reason Amazon is so successful is because they've made buying and acquiring their products so seamless. Like one click buy is all them.
Yep. So another piece to think through is your actual site stability. And I hate to have horror stories around Black Friday, but I feel like every SEO does and everyone who's managed a website does. Ensure that your site is actually stable. And as simple as that sounds, it's a bit more in depth than that. So consider using CDNs to help ensure that your sites are stable and potentially to help limit DDoS attacks on a site. I've worked with some brands where the week of Black Friday, they started getting hammered hard from bots mimicking Googlebot, but hitting their gift cards page. The side effect of that, they decided to block Googlebot from accessing their site. And the week of Black Friday, you don't want to do that. That is a way of basically saying, hey, we don't care about our organic traffic.
Oh, that's so painful.
Yeah. But there's also the idea of server capacity, right? So on average, if your deals are really good for a holiday, Black Friday, for example, you can expect to see double, if not triple, if not more, the traffic that you would normally see on a regular daily basis to your site. That's certainly another thing I've seen cripple e-commerce sites in the past is the inability to handle the demand that might be coming in, especially if you have a hot product or, like a big niche category product that's everyone wants. It can be very difficult there.
You just give me a flashback to PlayStation 5s. Everybody froze.
PlayStation 5, the other one that always comes to mind with me is those little miniature Nintendo consoles, like the retro consoles that they did. The amount of sites that those things took down on release day, everyone was down. Everyone, even Amazon had trouble handling that load. So the other piece is consider a code freeze for the holidays, right? If you're a site that's actively, regularly changing code, whether that be, weekly sprints, biweekly, every month, the last thing you want is instability around the holidays, right? If things are in a stable spot, you don't want to potentially put that at risk. One of the biggest challenges for SEO is you take one step forward, but two steps back. You push out some code release that's meant to change A, but inadvertently breaks B as a result. I've seen sites where, hey, we pushed out this code release, but we just, took our staging site and made it public, forgot to remove the no index tag or forgot to remove the disallow in the robust.txt file. Yeah, you might have improved this functionality, but now you've basically broken your SEO. You've broken the ability for search engines to care about and find that content.
If there's one takeaway from this webinar of what you absolutely can do, like before Black Friday, it's this, is talking to your dev team, talking to leadership, making sure everyone's on the same page so that you don't have what would be the biggest revenue backbreaker possible.
Yeah, and consider having things like site release checklists or automated testing tools or processes in place that can check for these things. The amount of times I work with brands where they push a code release live and inadvertently removes the title tags, breaks the canonicals, does something that hurts SEO, I've lost count of in my career. I'd be rich if I had $1 for every time that happened. So as best as you can, identify those things ahead of time or at least at the time of launch and get them fixed immediately.
Totally. Okay. Here we go down the towards the finish line here. So let's go through these Black Friday technical SEO audits.
Yeah, so plenty of things to look at from a technical perspective ahead of time, right? Ensure that your key pages are in your XML sitemap and that they're actually crawlable and getting respected by search engines. If you're submitting an XML sitemap that's completely full of errors, search engines are not going to like that. They're going to ignore it. They're going to throw a bunch of errors within Google Search Console. Leverage that crawl report within Google Search Console. And Bing Webmaster Tools is an excellent platform. Don't slack on Bing Webmaster Tools, but leverage those platforms to actually get insight around what's going on with your site and be able to go and fix these things. If Google's saying, hey, you have a ton of errors with your XML sitemap, fix them. Where you have the ability to quickly jump in and fix a potential concern with your site, it can help to improve the overall quality score of your domain, and search engines will see it in a better light as a result. Structured data. So it's that time.
It's structured data time.
So
okay.
I am a structured data nerd. There's so much opportunity for structured data on an e-commerce site and going into the holidays. But if you're not using product structured data today, that's certainly something that you should implement. This is the way of marking up things like your aggregate ratings, the product name, description, pricing, availability. All that information is extremely valuable to search engines in terms of understanding the products that exist on your site. But it also leads to rich snippets within search results. If you ever start to look at particular products in search, you'll see cases where they're showing the pricing, availability, and the star ratings directly there. The other piece that we talked about a little bit earlier on is the idea around FAQ and question schema. There's so much opportunity here that if you have products that specifically talk about FAQs, mark that information up. It will allow you to take advantage of those people also ask type opportunities within search.
And Google's continually adding more like schema, like enhancements. Like just the other day, they said, oh, by the way, we have these pros and cons. We have colors, like all these types of schemas that will show up as visuals and just get you that much more real estate for your brand.
Yeah, and keep an eye on what's required and what's recommended within schema when you're adding these things, right? So to Garrett's point, they just said, hey, we recommend that you include color. Cool. Well, if my product doesn't have a color function, then it's considered a recommended field for a reason. It's not required, but those are the types of things that you should look at what Google recommends including, and include as much information as you can within your schema.
Always check Google's documentation. It always gives like clues to what they're trying to get you to do.
And it changes regularly. So don't think it's permanent either. Like I said, internal linking is a big area of opportunity, right? This is the lifeblood of allowing authority to flow through your site to those deeper pages. So one quick area of opportunity is look for broken internal links that either are truly to broken pages like a 404 or links that go through a redirect. If they go through a redirect, you're shaving off some of that authority. It's not a fully effectively, as much as Google says it is, it's not passing through to the next page. And the more redirects that you have in that chain, the more difficult it is for search engines to understand where that went. There used to be a time where Bing would just give up after a certain number of redirects in the chain. So if your internal linking is not properly pointing to a canonical URL, you're missing out on that. And if it's going to a broken page, you're just leaving that on the cutting room floor. It's just not being used. Also look for those areas of opportunity to link to pages to further tie them to one another. These could be things like related products or content, blog posts, breadcrumbs, or just contextual linking within descriptions to deeper pages that might be related to something. If you're a brick and mortar based business, though, there's so many areas of opportunity for you to look at. Local SEO is certainly something to not skip out on if you're a brick and mortar based business. So Google My Business, now Google Business Profile, and 50 other names that they've changed over the course of time, it can be very valuable and something that is free to jump in on. Ignore the calls that saying you have to pay for something, but it's free to jump in at and fully capable of helping boost your organic performance there.
Yep.
Ensure that your NAP data, and when I say NAP, I mean name, address, and phone number, is consistent across your citation sources. So, beyond Google, Bing Places, Apple Maps, MapQuest, even Yellow Pages, all those citation sources are still relevant. But when there's inconsistency between them, it hurts you. So ensure that those things are as consistent as possible, and also that they match the information that's available on your website if you have store pages.
And to that point, I mean, if you're using a service like Yext or any of these, like when you do leave the citation page, you still need to be aware that if you ever do change a phone number or an address, like that's a massive undertaking. I would say citations aren't as important as they were like 5-10 years ago. Yeah. But to Zach's point, you have to have the actual, like wherever you are, you have to name, address, and phone number correct.
Yep. And one thing to take advantage of is hours of operation. So by default, if you're a brick and mortar based business, you should have these marked up in your citation platforms. But many of them, Google Business Profile especially, offers the ability to indicate different hours of operations for the holidays. So if you're a brick and mortar based business that has different holiday hours, take advantage of that. The last thing you want is a customer showing up after a store is closed or not showing up because they think you're closed and missing out on that opportunity to get a sale. Also take advantage of Google Business Profile posts. This is a good way to kind of mark up, hey, here's some updates we're doing. Here are some promotions. Here, we're changing our hours of operation for the holidays, but allows that to be directly displayed within SERPs. And that way you can directly convey information to your customers.
And one last thing about this is, like, even though this has mostly been focused on e-commerce, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, like for general kind of products that people are searching for, local SERPs, local results are showing up more and more in the search results. I feel like Google is trying to push like buying from local businesses. So if you are a brick and mortar store, you really need to have this because there's opportunity beyond just the people who are actually looking locally.
Right. You don't even have to be a commerce brand, right? I mean, if you're a service-based business, these things are still relevant there too. So product schema, Google Merchant Center, and PLAs, these things all have an overlapping impact on one another. So Google can take that product schema and use it to validate the information that you submit in your product feeds through Merchant Center. So this is a good way of being able to say, hey, I can't keep up with my product fee and the pricing information that's available in there. But if you have that product structure data around the pricing, the availability, and all these other fields on your site, it can essentially be validated just by Google crawling that content.
Exactly. So going to that point, we do have the Google Merchant Center. If you're in e-commerce, that's something you need to pay attention to right now, because that will potentially be a source for a lot of structured data to show up in these free listings. Very easy to set up. You just follow the documentation there. You create these feeds, as Zach mentioned, and then you can have basically them crawl your site. To Zach's point, you still need the HTML to be present for the schema for the web crawler to pick it up, but the Google Merchant Center has this automated process that makes it very easy.
Yep. And the other thing too is take advantage of your SEOs to help with these product feed things. There's been times throughout my career where I've helped companies generate their product feeds by crawling the site through a site crawler and extracting information too. So an SEO team can assist with optimizing these product feeds, but you can also leverage the tools available at your disposal to help support these situations as well.
Oh man, we got to it. We're at an hour, and I really appreciate folks for stopping by. It's awesome to do this webinar with Zach. I want to respect people's time, but at the same time, Zach, do you have any sort of parting thoughts about this upcoming Black Friday?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it goes back to the beginning, right? In some ways, it is a little bit too late to do some things. It will take some time for search engines to process change, let alone the actual time to implement change in, a possibly slower moving organization. But that doesn't mean you can't get a jump start on next year as well, right? So these idea creating buying guides and pages and enhancing your SEO, these are all things that can be done now that can start to have an impact, for this Black Friday, but will really set you up for success next year as well.
Yeah, and that's one thing, like for instance, like iPullRank, we do with a lot of our clients is we start to plant those seeds very early on. So when we have an engagement, kind of talking through what those Black Friday plans will be, so that you're not caught in the wind in mid-September when people are already buying and you're missing all those opportunities. So that's been the long and the short of it. For everyone who did register for the webinar, or if you're interested, hit us up. We've got this really great checklist that covers everything we went through, downloadable. It'll be via email along with the video replay and the presentation deck, so you can go and visit all those product pages that we reference and all the other resources from Google Docs to schema.org, etc. If you are interested, we have our ebook, which is the Modern Approach to Enterprise Content Strategy. This is a great resource that talks about everything from, auditing your own content to content governance to creating great content. That is free. So obviously sign up, give us some of your information, and we'll send you a free, amazing 70+ page book your way. I do a whole bunch of videos. Usually I'm not good at brevity. All my videos are long and awesome. No, they're like 10, 15 minutes. We've got these SEO weeklies, which are roundups of everything going on in the world of SEO. You can check that out at resources/SEO weekly. do podcasts where I interview a lot of experts in the SEO industry, talking about everything from natural language processing to in-house SEO to e-commerce to AI generation to news SEO, you name it. Always have episodes come out on Wednesday there. Woo, we are at the end. My name is Garrett Sussman, Demand Generation Manager at iPullRank. And Zach, who are you?
I'm Zach Chahalis. I'm the Director of SEO here at iPullRank. Always happy to help if you guys have any questions or want to learn more.
Great. We got time for one question. Norm wanted to say, it says that he always thought that internal links went from deep pages to the higher level page, but it seems like you're saying to go from the higher level page to the deep pages. Is that correct?
Yeah, in theory, it could go both, right? So you want to try and tie this content together in ways that's relevant. Breadcrumbs is a great way to go in that upper direction because you're tying back to essentially the parental page there. But if you think about like the flow of authority through the site, the homepage is typically the most authoritative. Your level 1 pages, then your level 2, then level 3. So by taking that authority and kind of waterfalling it down through internal linking, it can help those deeper pages build up that authority over time. But there's always areas of opportunity where it can essentially go both ways. You want to have links that point back up and say, oh, I looked at this product, but it wasn't the perfect fit. Oh, there's an easy way for me to go back and see other products within this category and be able to look at that perspective.
There you go. Thank you again, Zach. This has been awesome. I can't wait to do many more webinars with you. And thank you, everyone, for stopping by today. We will send the replay. That's Zach. My name's Garrett, and hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.